But if you look at all the current things, all the crazes promoted in the technological society through mass media that mobilise people in these insane causes and that stir such passionate feelings behind them in these little foot soldiers, every single one of these reduces to the category of a war on sanity. If you are sane, you are called nasty names. In this case, if you oppose this particular brand of insanity, you're a transphobe. However, if you resist the honk apocalypse in any other dimension, there's special nasty names for you as well. Of course, who could forget the preposterous nonsense regime of social distancing for a disease, I should remind you, that you had to test yourself to see if you had. This is what I mean by saying that Clown World War came to state level. As you can see, it is not only hilarious in some of its dimensions, but also extremely dark. And again, this is a war on the prudent, on the circumspect, on people who have self-restraint, on people who do not desperately need approval from other people, on people who can resist social pressures. Basically, this is a war on the wise and the sane. And it was a war to discredit everybody who had an independence of mind from the mass media narratives of the current thing. How did that end? Surely we were going to be plagued by an endless series of terrifying variants, and that's what we were told, until, of course, Vladimir Putin stopped it all by invading Ukraine. I will now don the intellectual spectacles for a brief diversion on the subject of that war. I am not excusing Vladimir Putin for his invasion of Ukraine, and nor am I going to get into the reasons for that invasion, which are complex but also involve serious moves by NATO to push its borders towards Russia and therefore collapse and overextend it and absorb it into the liberal global empire, etc. In brief, that war began in a rather clownish fashion in itself, at least in 2019, but my own personal research shows that it goes back to 1952, when the United States, interestingly, started backing Ukrainian nationalists to provide a bulwark against Russian influence when it was still the Soviet Union. The beclowning of the world is so intense that very few people are interested in hearing about these facts. This does not mean to say that the Russians are right. It does not mean to say that everything you're told is wrong. It just means to say that what is left out of the official narrative is as much a part of the current thing as what is included. Now, the Ukraine war became a phenomenally divisive but overwhelmingly coordinated campaign to compel everyone in the liberal West to support Zelensky. The merits of this war aside, it is interesting to see that once again the defence of democracy is invoked in order to sell you a war. If people who have been unfortunate enough to read my Substack will know that in my notes about my book on liberal democracy, I pointed out that this phrase was first used by Woodrow Wilson in 1917 to get Americans to enter what would become World War I. The defence of democracy is itself a meme and which is invoked whenever a war becomes the current thing. Now, why would I describe Ukraine as a current thing? We saw an epidemic of people adding blue and yellow flags to their bios, condemning people who didn't support it, calling anyone who had any reservations about it a Russian propagandist, saying that they were echoing Putin's talking points, that they were a traitor for not wanting to stoke a ruinous conflict on the borders of Europe, which appears to have ended in disaster. Predictable disaster as well. Indeed, some would argue self-sabotaging, given the effect of the economic sanctions and the mysterious mystery of the exploding gas pipeline of Nord Stream, which have had catastrophic effects on German industry and by extension the entire European economy. In fact, the reason why things are so expensive now in Europe is never connected to this event, but of course if your energy prices go up phenomenally, then everything else does as well, and they stay there until you return to sanity. In this case, I would say sanity is the preference for trade over war, and the recognition that though people are unlike us, and we may not very much like them, it is better to not kill each other because of our differences, and perhaps better to learn to live with them. I'm probably going to be called a Russian propagandist for that, but there it is. The idea that we've been sold a war isn't new. Of course, in 2003, the defence of democracy was invoked for the bombing and destruction of Iraq. That was a wonderful idea, wasn't it? Look how that's delivered the region to the Iranians and fomented Islamic terrorism and promoted mass migration, and the crisis in Libya was the same, and you can see where this is going.
Hi everyone, this is John Henry Weston for LifeSite News. We hope you found this video insightful. For more content like this, be sure to check out the links in the description below. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on the latest news concerning life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.